yeah!
And on to another episode of Spare from the Past. We're here to talk about Wrestlemania 2 this time. Talk about Wrestlemania 1 earlier on in the thing, but now we're on to number 2. And I've got Ryan Payne here. Ryan, how's it going?
I'm doing very good. I'm looking forward. I always look forward to talking about wrestling, and this was a very interesting show. I'll say. Well, interesting in the fact you get to watch it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's one of those ones like they've it's like seeing how WrestleMania has progressed to now from when it used to be. It's definitely a big jarring change, and with this one, they tried the experiment of broadcasting live in 3 different locations.
Yes.
And it's one of those ones like for people who are in these specific locations, it's they probably felt ripped off by only paying like so much to get into the stadium, only to watch like 2/3 of it on screen. Well, some people get to watch that part live.
Yeah, that was kind of funny because when I did look up the show, and I do remember from lots of wrestling podcasts and channels that they did. This was the first WrestleMania to do it in 3 different locations. I definitely did my research, and I did see that the only reason why they did that was to competing against, I believe, I think NWA, because Starcade did a pay-per-view where they had where they also did is shown in 2 different locations. So
Yeah.
WWE wanted to convince WWF at the time wanted to compete with that and go, oh, you did it in 2, let's do it in 3. But regardless of that, yeah, if I was one of those crowds either in Chicago or Los Angeles or New York, I would have felt a little ripped off, especially given the venues they booked for each location.
Yeah, and it's one of those ones like like if they want to do 2 WrestleMania in like 2 different locations, like they can have night 1 in one location, then night 2, like maybe not so much across the country, so to speak, because transporting wrestlers to different locations overnight is not easy.
Well, I
But
mean, it was clear from the card on each location. They
yeah,
definitely had specific wrestlers for certain shows. And
yeah,
I mean, as much as I'm not a fan of the whole breaking WrestleMania into 2 different nights, if they do want to do that experiment, that honestly is the best possible solution to do. If you want to do a night 1 of WrestleMania, a night 2 of WrestleMania,
yeah,
like you can start booking different talent for different locations, so that way you can
yeah,
still do the whole everyone got a shot at WrestleMania, but and then people still get to go see it, like either if you do it in Chicago or maybe in Florida or in Louisiana, like the most recent one's going to be.
yeah,
I mean, the next year, not next year, not this
yeah,
one.
yeah. No, I know what you mean. I mean, watch them try and do it like one in London and one in Saudi Arabia or something stupid like
Oh,
that.
sure.
It's like,
They're already doing a Royal Rumble in Saudi Arabia, so it won't surprise me when Mania goes there.
look, it's one of those ones like it's probably just a case of like Triple H is just making the most of that deal as much as he could.
Yeah.
Who we don't know if he's going like. There's no sign if he's going to renew it. Once it runs it was like pretty sure it was like a 10-year deal or something like that.
I believe, yes. Well, I can't remember if it was late 2010s when that deal was made, but
Yeah,
yeah, 10 years for Saudi Arabia to have those shows. I mean, they couldn't keep doing more super shows and crown jewels there. Sooner or later, they were going to ask for a pay-per-view.
yeah, and it's one of those ones like and this will be the last thing I'm saying. So, I know a lot of people are shitting on the fact that they made their own titles specifically for Saudi Arabia. So I don't mind that too much. Like, and it's one of those ones. Like, I like the fact that like, but both Liv and Cody got to actually get something physical to have, like, to keep on them
Hmm.
in the end. But with that, we'll probably eventually hit one of the Saudi Arabia shows sooner or later, so we can talk more about that deal. But for now, we're talking about WrestleMania 2. And but yeah, so this was an interesting experiment, which I don't necessarily know if it paid off perfectly, but we started off by having Ray Charles singing "America the Beautiful." which I think is a good get. I mean, you can get Ray Charles or anything, like it's always good. And then like for the New York section, we had Vince, and then some actress who I have never heard of before called Susan St. James. She's probably a big deal back then.
I
Doing the
believe
comment.
I did about after I watched WrestleMania 2, I did look on to I did go to a YouTube channel, Wrestling with Regret. They reviewed WrestleMania 2, so I believe the man Brian Zane, he gave a lot more information dump behind some of them. But even then, looking her up, yeah, she was an actress for a very popular TV show. But also looking up, she was the wife of, I believe, an NBC exec or someone who was in charge of NBC
Yeah,
Sports. It's why I believe she was mainly the head she was with Vince for doing the color commentary. Well,
yeah.
lack thereof.
Um, but then then we go to a backstage interview of Roddy Piper talking about his match against Miss Ted, and then he makes this weird statement that's like he'll quit professional boxing, professional wrestling, and professional tiddlywinks, which I thought was a random thing to throw out there, but it was just a standard like promo from like Roddy Piper talking about how he's intending to win this match. Now I don't think there's much to say about it. Anything you want to add about that promo?
There really isn't much to say about that promo. It just did its job.
Yeah,
I mean, this WrestleMania. It was like, I mean, you did say the staunch like differences. Like it really is feels like a, I won't say a cult. Well, yeah, with us growing up with WrestleMania being so linked with now there's a WrestleMania 41 happening. It really does feel like a culture shock
yeah,
of seeing how the promos and everything was how everything was paced out. But yeah,
yeah,
that promo just didn't land with me. I think
yeah,
because of the technical difficulties they were having. So I'm like, wait, can I hear him or not?
yeah, yeah. It was kind of clear, especially in some cases, like they didn't test out the whole like transfer between venues too much.
No, they
Although,
didn't.
although in saying that that one was in the same venue, I don't like. But the first match we had on the card was Paul Orndorff versus the magnificent Don Muraco with Mr. Fuji as the manager. And yeah, this match it was um it was fine. Like I wasn't that invested in the match, and it just and ending in a double count out, like it kind of was very anticlimactic for the match that it was. But
Yeah, I believe the
Brian, with
crowd
any
was pissed off. I think I heard bullshit chants from the crowd because they didn't
yeah,
like how that ended.
but what are your thoughts about that match there, Ryan?
Um, Honestly, the match. I mean, as far as a simple, straight up like of its time of wrestling, it was pretty much simple, competent match. I don't know. Sometimes it felt like to me it was a mix of like them doing a fight than wrestling.
Yeah,
Um, because I mean, clearly I saw lots of punches. There was barely any body slams. Maybe some fly. They did like some jump double axe handles and clotheslines, but as far as that match goes, and it was okay. You know, it served its purpose there for the crowd. You know,
yeah,
although that actually didn't serve its purpose because the crowd was pissed off by the ending, and even then, it took them a while to actually announce how it ended because then we were just flipped to a promo.
oh yeah, and that's one of those ones like that kind of annoy me a lot about this, and like they'll flip the go away some and then come back. It's like, oh yeah, the match ended this way. It's like, okay. um, and then we had the backstage promo of Mr. T talking about his match. Once again, pretty much standard promo. It didn't really once again. I don't. It didn't really hit that much to me as either. But it's like, yeah, that did its purpose.
I think
But
it's a clear difference between Piper and Mr. T when they were doing the promos. Piper, complete professional. I mean, you ever hear him on the mic? It's clear this man can sell you moldy cheese and tell you it's the best damn piece of cheese you're ever gonna have. Well, Mr.
yeah,
T, he just simply straight up, like you can't tell if he wants to be in character or if he's actually or the man behind Mr. T wants to start talking. So I
Yeah,
mean, at least with that, I do see at least with selling the whole purpose of the boxing match, he is at least getting his point across. Like he wants to beat the hell out of Piper.
yeah. Um, but then next up we had the Intercontinental Championship match between Randy Savage versus George the Animal Steel. And look, Susan St. James really annoyed me in commentary, and this was most of the time she was complaining about how Miss Elizabeth was treated badly by Randy Savage and Zoom. It was like once or twice I fine, but pretty much the entire match it was getting to be really annoying.
Yeah, I think
Um,
yes, it was clear Susan's really during that entire thing. She's clearly not, trained, or she wasn't prepped for color commentary. It almost seems to me
yeah,
Vince was trying to. It feels to me Vince was trying to at least give her so many quick notes on the storylines. Like
yeah,
I don't know if there was a storyline where Savage was treating Miss Elizabeth um, like harshly before he started before the Mega Powers, before he became heavyweight champion.
yeah,
Um, it just seems to me like maybe she was just trying to add her color commentary in just to make the match more entertaining because at least with George Steele, it was clear Savage is doing his damn job playing his character, being terrified of Steele, being a cowardly heel. If I believe he's supposed to be a heel in that match. The crowd, on the other hand, I couldn't even tell because they were cheering for him.
yeah. And I think it's one of those ones like especially with crowds, especially nowadays, like um, they will cheer a heel if they really like them, even though if they really shouldn't be doing it. Um, Um, but um, but yeah, the match itself, like for a Randy Savage match, like it was a good match. I wouldn't put it in like a top 12 Randy Savage matches of all time, but like it was good. But it was also just not really that overly exciting as well. It did its job. Like Randy won the title. I can't
This
remember
was
if
more of
he,
a character. This was more of a character
yeah,
match more than a wrestling match,
yeah,
which is why both Steele and Savage was really on point there. I This is kind of my first George the Animal Steel match, but from so many podcasters, or at least so many wrestling YouTubers, that like to talk about with when they talk about classic wrestling, George Steele played his character like as a not like a monster, but kind of like pretty much like a wild man, I mean, yeah,
yeah,
the animal is his name, but George always played his character like a wild man, like the best comparison, Street Fighter character Blanca, Blanca's character, civilized guy left alone, left abandoned. Well, civilized a kid grows up in the Amazon and they're just this wild man. That's how I felt like the animal. That's how George Steele was coming across, especially I didn't even notice that, but him biting the turnbuckle happens to be a signature style of his in matches.
yeah. Um, yeah, no, like I'm I'm fairly certain this is one of my first George Animal Steel matches as well, and like I've played him a lot of the 2K25, but like I've had banging matches with George Steele versus Logan Paul because why not?
That's
But
probably the best. That's probably the best person to have if you want to squash a Logan Paul.
um, but yeah, the match was what it was. It was just one of those ones that but I will say this: it did make me excited to see more of George Animal Steele's matches later on. I don't know how many matches they actually had in the WWE, but I dare say there's more than one anyway.
I mean, I'm pretty sure. I mean, I don't know when Savage lost the Intercontinental Championship. I mean, I know he loses it too, but I don't know when he does. But I'm pretty sure they have had more fights against each other. George
Yeah,
Steele does. He is a I mean, knowing the fact that he's etched in WWE history, he's definitely had more than one go. He's definitely had more than one go against Randy Savage.
yeah. Um, then after that we had went to I I want to say it went to New York. I think that was really big NFL. The battle royale and that happened.
No, it was in Chicago. It was in Chicago.
Chicago. Yeah, but then because we had Mean Gene talking to Big John Studd and Paul Frelick, who I believe was an NFL player at the time, talking about their match, which once again, it, standard kind of promo for the match. Nothing of note really was said. Um, but then after that, we had Jake the Roberts versus some wrestler called George Rouse, which was pretty much a squash match for Jake Roberts, which is still weird to say, was like, which meant like one of those ones. It's really odd to say that it was like a squash match for Jake Roberts, considering he's like a well-known wrestler at the time. But this must have been really early in his career.
Actually, funny thing was is that looking up that what from another thing I picked up from watching Brian Zane on his review. This was actually Jake Roberts was he debuted in the WWF about 2 or 3 weeks before WrestleMania. So this literally was like a huge introduction of him to the crowd, especially with that Snake Damien. Well, I don't think the name was Damien at the time, but yeah, him bringing that snake in there.
Yeah,
So that was like a really fun, interesting fact to learn. I mean, even if I went on Cage Match and looked up his wrestling record, it's still very interesting to know that he debuts for the company early on, and then immediately he's really thrown in. I mean, sure, it does look like a jobbing match. I don't know much about his opponent, George. I'm forgetting his last name. I just know his name is also George. But yeah, he must have made a big impress. He must have impressed Vince enough to be like, you know what, I'm gonna give you a singles match for one of the WrestleMania venues.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, and once again, Susan on commentary talking about how she doesn't want to meet the snake. I was just
Oh,
yeah.
There- like I think every now and well, not every now and then, there was a few moments where Susan did at least come up with Nat. She did sound a little more like comfortable, but yeah, it was clear that she was just there, and it was Vince mainly the one doing all the talking. Which, looking at some classic matches of Vince commentating, he didn't mind that much.
Yeah,
He definitely wanted to be the talker. He wanted to be the commentary guy.
yeah. But moving on, we had a promo with Jesse Ventura talking to Hulk Hogan in LA. It was classic Hulk Hogan promo, like nothing much different there. And then we go into the main event of this stadium, which was Mr. T coming in with Joe Frazier defeating Waddy Piper with Lou Duva and Bob Orton in a boxing match. We
Hmm.
had the guest ring announcer of Joan Rivers with the judges, which is Daryl Dawkins, who do not know who that is. I think it's an NBA person
It
or
was a
something.
lot of NFL and sports like guys. I mean, NBC Sports at the time they were mainly covering NFL, so I'm pretty sure it was a lot of NFL like either former players or personalities of NBC Sports. But honestly, I mean, looking at this whole thing, like Vince overloaded this paper. He overloaded WrestleMania 2 with so many celebrities. He was
Yeah,
really
it's like
but yeah, it was during that time he was trying to throw things at the wall and see what sticks, or trying to bring a lot of exposure by bringing these famous people like actors, actresses, comedians, really trying to bring so much attention for this event. I mean, it must have been successful, otherwise there would not have been a WrestleMania 3. And then moving on forward.
yeah, it's one of those ones like it's one of those ones like looking at the names of a lot of the celebrities that are here. Is like a lot of these people I've never heard of before, but they're probably big names back in the day. Like Cab Calloway, who I believe is an actor who was in a big show. Like I think Joan Rivers called him the Heidi High guy or something like. Then G. Gordon Liddy, who I think is another sports personality. And then we had the guest timekeeper, which was this random guy called Herb.
Oh, that's definitely that was also something. Thank God I watched Brian Zane's review. He said that this guy Herb, he was more notable from commercials. I can't recall if it was a Burger King or from a or a commercial that made him that made him famous. So
Yeah.
it's definitely of that time. He was well known.
Yeah. Um, but the match itself, it was a decent boxing fight. The fact that they had it end in a DQ kind of took out the steam a little bit. I think had they actually done the full boxing fight, I think it would have been somewhat decent. But I think it was one of those ones. I think it was clear that like Roddy Piper really wanted to wrestle Mr. T, but they kind of had. It seems like they had to come to a compromise somewhere along the line, and so I was like, but yeah, what are your thoughts about the match itself?
Yeah, this was one. I'll yeah. As far as like Willie Piper and T putting down the nuclear heat that they were giving each other to really show the crowd that yeah, we don't like each other and we're just gonna beat the hell out of each other. They did that well, but here's also another funny fact I found from Brian Zane during his review. It turns out that Piper before the match he had his fists taped before he got them in the glove. I don't know if that was meant. I for a second I was going, why is that a fun fact? And then I looked at the match. The fact he was landing so many blows is mainly because I think it may have been one of the contributing factors why his hands were taped up, and the fact he was lining up so many. Oh wait, sorry, no, I'm remembering. The company was terrified that he would actually hurt Mr. T in a boxing match, so they made sure to at least tape up his fist in a way to help soften blows when he is throwing his punches. Because he was throwing a hell of a lot at
Yeah,
him. I think if I don't have the statistics down, but if I have to say out of out of the if I was to go like on a percentage scale, 80% of his blows, 80% of the punches he threw landed. I'd say 80 out of 100 punches he threw landed at Mr. T. That's what I mean. Yeah.
yeah. uh, um, but with that, that is the New York portion of this. But now we're going to move on to the Rosemont Horizon Arena, which is in Chicago.
Yep.
And our commentator we had there was Mean Gene, Gorilla Monsoon, and Kathy Lee Crosby, who was another like big actress, known actress at the time. Not so much now, but um, but the first match we had on the card was the fabulous Moolah defeating Velvet McIntyre for the WWF Women's Championship. For a championship match, this was a kind of really quick match.
Ooh.
I don't know how old the fabulous Moolah was at this time, like because she had to be at least in her 40 or 50s.
She looked like she may have been like maybe somewhere like within her 50s because looking at her opponent Velvet, she clearly was the younger of the
Yeah,
wrestler. And yeah, seeing how quick this match went, my head was scratching. I really did try to look. I well not didn't look up as much. Thankfully, another fun fact came across Brian Zane. It turns out that Velvet, that wrestler, she was actually she was already booked to wrestle a show, I believe, in Australia, but I believe WWF pretty much told her is like they weren't going to fly her out. It was either she was going to wrestle that match or she wasn't going to, or she was fired. Which was another thing they did on somebody else later in the pay per view, which I'll
yeah,
bring that up for. But she had to cancel that booking she had and wrestle against Moolah. And it seems that one of the reasons, and then another thing I looked, one of the reasons why the match ended so quickly was after that little high that top rope splash she did, she kind of overshot a little bit, and it seemed that her bra underneath her singlet broke. So to protect kids from accidentally seeing a bit of a nip slip or seeing a reveal from her singlet outfit, they had the match end very quickly.
yeah.
I mean,
Um,
but then of course I did learn she did end up taking the belt off of Moolah later down the road, but then Moolah ended up winning it back a week later.
yeah. Looking into this, she had to been almost 60 when she
Six. Okay, yeah.
yeah. because she was born in 1923, and this Mania was 86. So
Oh
yeah, she
yeah,
had to be. She was about 63. So, um, but I will say, like, she looked really. She was did look really good for her age. I will admit that. Um, but yeah, it being a like quick match, is like it kind of took a little bit of sting out of it, but it was good to actually see a match from the Fabulous Moolah. I was This is probably the first like outside of when she made the random appearances with Mae Young later down the line with in WWE, but yeah, it was good to actually have seen a Fabulous Moolah match, and there's definitely going to be more coming up various pay-per-views. There was yeah. Um, I don't have much more to add. It was a
yeah,
quick
really not
match.
much. It was just a
Yeah,
short match. That's like I think that's the shortest match of the entire pay per view.
yeah, because apparently, Velvet McIntyre won the belt from her at some stage, around that time, and only had like a 6-day reign after in Australia. Then, when Fabulous Moolah won it back, something like that. Anyway, but then we had Corporal Kirchner versus Nikolai Volkov with Freddie Blassie as the manager in a flag match, and then Nikolai Volkov coming out doing his usual thing of
Hmm.
singing the Russian anthem till he got cut off by Corporal Kirchner coming out, and and it was another really quick match. It was kind of clear that they were kind of making they wanted the battle royale to have a good amount of time in the stadium, but Ryan, what are your thoughts about Corporal Kirchner defeating Nikolai Volkov?
This match honestly felt like a mess. The rest, whoever the wrestler is, I mean, he was just if this whole thing was for him to be all gung ho and just be hot headed or play like he's doing a speed run of a match, that was his whole performance. He wasn't slowing down. He was constantly charging in, attacking Volkov. Like he was wrestling at high pace energy. Like someone had just given him a shot of adrenaline, or I don't know, loaded him up on cocaine and go out there and wrestle.
Yeah,
I mean, him winning though felt a little weird, especially the fact that it was called a flag match. I'm trying to remember the purpose of a flag match. Wasn't it supposed to hit your opponent with the flag you have, and then that's it?
and yeah, I don't think they ever explained the rules of that. I've seen other flag matches like on other pay per views, and from what I understand, is the rule is you got to capture the flag or something like that.
Okay.
I don't know. But yeah, it was just one of those weird matches that like yeah, and it's one of those ones. I don't mind gimmick matches. I would appreciate if they would explain it more.
Or at least, yeah, make it clear. 'Cause this honestly just felt like more of a nation pride match, because Volkov is the foreign heel and Corporal's the American babyface hero. I mean, he felt to me like a Sergeant Slaughter replacement. So didn't
Yeah,
surprise me that the American hero comes out on top.
yeah. No, it was. I mean, as an example, it's like it was just like last year when they were like announcing the bloodline rules matches. Like it's basically just an extreme match with interference, which I find it weird that they decided to add it into 2K25 this year. It's like, um, which from what I understand is like you can add allies to your wrestler and do a payback to cause someone to come out and interfere. But um, anyway, moving on to this, we had the NFL versus WWE Battle Royale, which seemed to be really lopsided to WWE people. um, but the competitors that we had in this, we had Andre the Giant, we had Jimbo Covert, who I believe is an NFL player, we had King Tonga, who you people know better as Haku, Ernie Holmes, Jim Brunzell, Tony Atlas, who I think was an NFL player at the time before he moved into
Yeah, but I think here he's more of a well-known WWE wrestler at the
Oh
very.
yeah. No, that's what I was getting at. Like he's more known now as a wrestler, but I think at the time of this, I think he was still an NFL player. And there had Pedro Morales, Harvey Martin, Ted R. City, Danny Spivey, Hillbilly Jim, B. Brian Blair, Bill Frelick, The Iron Sheik, Bruno Sammartino, William the Refrigerator Perry, Big John Studd, Russ Francis, Jim Neidhart, and Bret Hart. Um, so it's one of those ones like I don't know many of those names. Like I mean I don't follow the NFL at all, and that is one of those ones like nowadays. Like I think back in the day, people might recognize those NFL names, but now a lot of them are kind of either when it's the case of Tony Atlas and they're more known as being a wrestler now, or it's people like William Perry who I think was a big fame. Like they didn't have any like the big heavy hitters that I would know from around this time, but
Yeah.
but ultimately Andre the Giant won, which it's one of those ones like kind of the way that I thought it might have gone anyway. But Ryan, what are your thoughts about this battle royale?
Well, I mean, you did say earlier they really did want to like wrestle in these matches so the battle royal had more time, and it definitely shows here, especially with all the long entrances that Mean Gene had to do for each of those players. And you could definitely tell this was a Chicago crowd because when a player of the Chicago Bears was introduced, you heard a pop, but
Yeah,
not a bigger pop than William Perry got. And it was definitely there where you do see like this one. It really was very cluttered. I mean, Gorilla and Mean Gene were obviously on commentary. They were keeping up with the action. Um, Kathy Lee Crosby, who was the celebrity commentator, she clearly was like really like lost in everything. Nothing to do with shit. That's my fucking. That someone just sent me a fucking video. Sorry. But what I'm going to say is that it's hilarious how you have these two, you really do see the differences there. Vince with Susan there, how Vince dominates a lot, not doing his best to do a back and forth with Susan, but even though Gorilla and Kathy Lee, I mean, even though Kathy's not the best, you do see that Gorilla and Mean Gene are at least trying to engage with her a little bit to really
yeah,
try to steer the conversation towards her to get her to chime in. And it is interesting. And she did have at least a few good. She was a little better. I mean, compared with Susan, because clearly you do see the pairing that she was with. It was just funny how they were having a hard time keeping track of who's thrown in and out. And then finally, it's not until they get like 8 or 9 guys down, everything
yeah,
starts getting easier to follow. And the funny thing with Bret Hart, it was really weird. Bret Hart early in his career. I mean, yeah, tag team, Hart Foundation. I didn't know it was that early on. I always thought Bret Hart was a single star. Then the Hart Foundation came in later. So it was really nice to see that. And it was like, I do like the fact that down to it, once they got rid of the NFL stars, the focus at least got back a little bit on wrestling, even if it was like in a haze.
yeah. Yeah, and it's one of those ones like I will give some credit to like Kathy Lee Crosby because like when they talked to her at the start of this section, she actually did mention on how she's a big fan. She's a big wrestling fan anyway, so it kind of made sense for why she was there. Like she actually acted like she wanted to be there and not like Susan was like who was probably there because her husband or yeah, the husband's like the boss of the network. Um, and then we go on to the Mean Gene interviewing Jimbo Covert, who claims that he was cheated in the match. Which once again I don't know if that goes anywhere, but that is what it is. Um, But then we go into the main event, which was the British Bulldogs, which was made up of Davey Boy Smith and the Dynamite Kid, defeating
Mm-hmm.
the Dream Team, which was Greg Valentine and Brutus Beefcake.
Yeah.
Um, the look, this was a pretty good. Ultimately, this was a pretty good match. That in this section, and it was a pretty good tag match. I was into it. The endings seemed to be a little bit weird with the British Bulldogs kind of saying like we're going to move to America and whatnot. Like, with all that, but apart from that, I think the match itself was pretty good. But Ryan, what did you think about this tag match for the British Bulldogs and versus the Dream Team?
I will say this out of all the wrestling match, out of all the matches on this pay-per-view, this was the better. This was the best one because you do see that because both teams show great chemistry in the ring. I'm pretty sure they fought each other before WrestleMania 2. They probably had a couple of matches against each other with the Dream Team and the British Bulldogs. So the fact that I'm guessing with that knowledge ahead of time, them being familiar with each other, they were easy. It was easy for them to do their own beats, to be able to do lots of pop, to get pops from the audience, to get the crowd invested. And I do like and of course with the finish, the Bulldogs winning. It was actually a very interesting one where the partner slams into his other one and then falls on top of his opponent for the pin. That I mean, it looked a little goofy, but I go, you know what? Hey, if it gets a pop from the crowd when they win, it worked. But beyond that, it was still a very, very solid match. I will say that like I did say, this is clearly the best match of WrestleMania of WrestleMania 2. I don't know exactly how long the British Bulldogs held those titles, but having them beat the Dream Team was definitely a big moment for them because they had the whole after, they did the whole after interview in the ring.
Yeah. Yeah, I was reading up about this. I think they hold it for a bit. I think not too long after this, I think Dynamite Kid actually ends up leaving, and someone else ends up. I remember looking up this at one point, but
What is it?
oh, yeah, yeah. So they won the after they won the title. Oh, that was one thing I was going to say. Was like, Ozzy Osbourne seemed really out of it in this match.
It looked like he may have partied before the match, and then he just showed up.
Yeah, British Bulldogs forever. But then later on, in the year, like Dynamite Kid would suffer a serious injury in a match, and they had later on, and then so afterwards, when tag titles defense were made, like he was substituted with like Roddy Piper, Junkyard Dog, Billy Jack Haynes at various times.
Yes.
And then apparently Vince sent him to get Dynamite's tag belt, which Billington refused, and then he checked himself out of the hospital against doctor's orders, and then who met with McMahon, who then requested that the Bulldogs drop the tag titles to the Iron Sheik and Volkov, which he refused, saying that he would only drop the belts to the Hart Foundation. So that's kind of how the so it was literally like on 26th of January was when the British Bulldogs lost the titles to the Hart Foundation, and that which was an odd sight as Dynamite could barely walk because of the back surgeries. So yeah, and then from that point on, they'd not be like a top tier team anymore, which is kind of sad to hear, but it's like it also kind of shows like how much of it kind of shows more of the character of Vince as well, as like in that story, which was really sad to hear, but it's one of those ones like but it's one of those ones like it's one of those cases where it sounded like Dynamite was intentionally acting difficult just so they could get the Hart Foundation titles. I don't know, but moving on.
I don't know. I mean, if he was dealing with back issues, I mean, it kind of makes a little
Oh,
sense.
yeah. Well, it was one of those ones like if he was dealing with back issues, it was like, and you did, and when you didn't know how long it was going to take, like,
Yeah.
like, like Vince. Look, this is the rare time you'll hear me say this. I don't think Vince was in the wrong about the decision, the decision, but I think Billington was also in the wrong for being difficult to go. Oh, I'll only drop it to this team. I don't want to drop it to that. It was like I don't know, but yeah, but that's it. And also, I do like the way they set like, even though I think this whole like free stadium type show was really confusing to follow at times. I do like
Mhm.
how they set it up so that the New York one was first, and then they end up in LA because of the time difference. I assume it's because of the time differences.
I mean, if they
Um,
were all if each show was showing at the same time, it obviously, yeah, with the time zone differences, definitely was a big factor in it. Um,
yeah,
it's just more of like a situation with the production quality. You do see that it was Vince really was pushing the limits of what this could do at that time. I mean, I haven't seen that Starcade I haven't seen that Starcade pay-per-view where they did two venues simulcasting. So I don't know if it worked for them, but the fact that it
yeah,
wasn't done again kind of proves to me that maybe that they realized they just weren't ready.
yeah. And but goes back to the point I made like earlier. I think if they wanted to try that again with the technology we've got now, it might be run more smoothly than it did back then. Whether
Hmm.
or not people want to see them try this again, I don't know. Um, but
No, I mean, if Vince was still in power, I'm pretty sure he'd want to do that again, but he's not.
yeah, yeah. But moving on, we had the at, in the LA section, we had Jesse Ventura, Lord Alfred, and Elvira as the commentators for this segment. Um, Elvira was actually someone I've heard of before, um, because she as I know I've heard Austin talk about her at one point. But she's also famous for her TV show that she used to doing that, and so I was actually knew the name of Elvira. So But with this, the first match we had was Ricky Steamboat versus Hercules Hernandez. Which interesting fact, the ring announcer that they had for this match was the voice of Tony the Tiger at the time, who took over from Phil Ravenscroft. So it was, and this is one of those things I found out when I read someone else's review of this, who pointed out there's like they completely forgot that Tony the Tiger was the big announcer of this match. Um,
It's just another example of Vince, getting celebrities, sometimes hoping people will recognize them by their names, and sometimes it does come down to looking up in the history, like, oh, this person was there, or, you see, this person was here.
well, yeah, I mean, although in this case, this is actually one of those cases where I don't know if it was necessarily because like he was like the voice of Tony Tiger. So I think he's like I looked up this guy. I think he's got a career as being a primarily a ring announcer that must have just like brought on to be Tony the Tiger later. I don't like one of those ones I don't know pretty much the whole backstory about this. But the match itself seemed to be really quick. And it was for a Ricky Steamboat match, it was fine. But Ryan, what are your thoughts about Ricky Steamboat versus Hercules Hernandez?
I mean, it was a competent match. Ricky Steamboat was definitely he was already established as a very good technical wrestler. I'm not sure if he could wrestle almost anybody, but it's pretty much you put something against Ricky Steamboat, you're at least going to get an entertaining match. And I think I do have here on my bit of notes that I also picked up that I also jotted down while watching Brian Zane. He did mention that it's fun. Originally, it turns out that Bret Hart wasn't supposed to be in that battle royal in the original plans. It was meant to be him and Ricky Steamboat in the LA venue. But I'm guessing some plans changed to where Bret end up being with his partner in the Chicago venue for the Battle Royal. Maybe they didn't have enough
Yeah.
bodies or not enough wrestler. They couldn't get enough. Maybe there wasn't any notable names, any wrestlers, so to put in that Battle Royal. So I'm guessing Bret Hart just had to be sacrificed, and Ricky got to go up against somebody else.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, well, I would love to see a Ricky Steamboat versus Bret Hart match. To be honest, uh, I gotta like surely it had to have happened at one point. But we'll get there when we get there if that did happen. But I don't really have much to add about this match. Like it was a decent match.
Yeah,
And
it was 100% decent.
yeah. Um, but then we go into the next match, which was Adrian Adonis with Jimmy Hart as the manager defeating Uncle Elmer. And the only thing I wrote down was it was a match. um,
Yeah,
this was this was just a nothing match that didn't really do anything of note. But Ryan, what are your thoughts about Adrian Adonis versus Elmer? I don't know if you've got much more to add about this one.
I really don't have anything to add. I honestly think this was just simply this was just a character. This was like the other end of a character match. I mean, I could say Savage and George and the Animal Steel. That was more of a positive. Like that's like a good character match. This one is a bad character match where it's clear these guys are just two explosive personalities, and they were just like, "Here you go. Here's a match. Have some time. Buy some time." Uh,
Yeah,
buy
yeah,
some time so they can get their production quality back on hand so we can start doing promos.
yeah. But then we had like another sort of backstage interview with and that, which once again, in this day and age, it was just a standard promos. There really is nothing interesting about them. But moving into the next match, we had Terry and Hoss Funk, who I think is more known as Dory Funk. But
Yes, that was the
yeah,
name that they were saying during commentary, Dory Funk.
yeah. This was just whatever reason it was labeled on Wikipedia as Hoss Funk, but I don't know if it was ever announced as that. But then it was versus Tito Santana and the Junkyard Dog.
Mhm.
And once again, this was a pretty good. Like I enjoyed this match. Like once again, it was a standard tag team match, but it was still a decent match. On this pay per view of mixed bag. But Ryan, what are your thoughts about Terry and Dory Funk versus Tito and the Junkyard Dog?
This was definitely another good match. I would put this underneath the tag team championship match. So this one was very good. I will say both the Funks did a good job of really setting up themselves at a not just competent, but a seasoned tag team. Because just going match in, if just looking at going match in, just seeing the pairings, it's clear that the Funks are definitely more of the cohesive tag team compared, like if you looked at Tito Santana and Junkyard Dog. But that's like I say, if you're just going in just looking at the match by itself, those are the assumptions you're putting together. But I think going in some context, I think Santana and Junkyard Dog, they've tag teamed before in the past. I think even building up to WrestleMania. So it is, but even then, it's still a great match. They're both of them are all four men are shining and they're playing their roles great. I was entertained by this.
Yeah. And then next up, we had Hulk Hogan versus King Kong Bundy for the World Heavyweight Championship. And we had the guest ring announcer, which was Tommy Lasorda, who was a baseball manager at the time. We had the guest timekeeper, which was Ricky Schroeder from the TV show Silver Spoons. And
I
then we had the guest ref, which was Robert Conrad, who played James T. Rest in the Wild West TV show.
yeah,
Which once again, um, Vince throwing out guests, people, and hoping they stick. Although I will say it's weird having guest ref for steel cage match, to be honest.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, this was a partnership they were doing with NBC at the time, so I'm
yeah,
pretty sure with NBC boosting coverage, like really getting as many celebrities on there. I think it was there. I think it was Vince trying to justify maybe the extensive money that was being put into this. You know, if people were learning that this celebrity was here, or this location, or this celebrity was here, or was going to be a part, or was featured, I guess it would help with pay per view buys. So,
oh
but yeah,
yeah, yeah,
it really, I do agree with you. It is Vince throwing celebrities, seeing if they stick, but they go so fast to every celebrity from New York, Chicago to LA. They announce them so fast. Like you don't
yeah.
give them time to breathe. Outside of when they had Joan Rivers doing the introduction, she actually let some of it breathe.
I mean, but then it's one of those ones with Joan Rivers. I think that's just the way she talks. Like she's not one of these fast talkers anyway.
I mean, she is
um,
a live performer, but I don't understand. Maybe she was also told she was on a time crunch, so she's like,
yeah,
just announce their names and move forward. I mean, it's kind of like what Mean Gene was doing for the Battle Royal.
yeah, yeah. No, it's one of those ones like I don't like I don't mind them getting guest spots in there. It's one of those ones like getting a guest ref into a steel cage match. I think is kind of well, yes, like the refs do stuff with hanging out on the outside, opening up the cage, and that was like it was still weird having someone as a guest ref for a steel cage match. That's just me, but the match itself, it it was decent. Like I've once again, I've probably watched one, like seen other couple of King Kong Bundy matches since doing this, but like he's always been like it's a somewhat capable wrestler. And Hulk Hogan, like love him or you hate him, like he's like regardless of his political views or stuff he's done outside of wrestling, he was a good wrestler and like he had that is a like he did do a good job in this match. It was like but it was one of those ones like it was also a decent like just fine match. But Ryan, what are your thoughts about this Hulk Hogan versus King Kong Bundy?
I mean, clear. I will. I mean, I will say this was Hogan at the height of his popularity. I won't say he could do no wrong here, but as far as when it came to the eyes of the fans, he clearly was heavy favorite, no matter who you put up against him.
Yeah,
And yeah, they did the whole angle of him being his ribs being hurt, and then have those constant video packages and promos of him be like, "Oh, I'm not gonna let my fans, the Hulkamaniacs, down." So they do the whole thing of him working out in with taped ribs, but then I can't remember if he walked in with taped ribs in the beginning of the match or not. I mean, I only watched WrestleMania 2 like during the weekend, so I really don't remember if he had those taped ribs on or not. If he didn't, that's literally just there goes keeping up the kayfabe of Hogan having hurt ribs. I mean, sure, he may have sold them whenever Bundy attacked him during this match, and at least one thing I did appreciate with the steel cage. The original stipulation was to escape the cage, no pins, no submissions inside, like it's been tweaked for modern in modern
yeah,
wrestling. Although there is some modern wrestling that is trying to go back to the old stipulation to where you have to escape the cage. It helps with the drama. And it did play out very well on a few occasions, you know, having King Kong with almost at ease trying to empty out, and then Hulk doing the fighting spirit, not letting him leave. So you do see those moments. And I did mention earlier on that there was another wrestler, a person I was going to bring up that WWE almost did dirty. Which I came across from Brian Zane while watching the review. He mentioned Bobby Heenan when he came out with King Kong Bundy. It turned out that Heenan originally was scheduled to have some surgery on his neck before WrestleMania. He was in Florida, like at a hospital, but then unfortunately he was told by the company, aka Vince, that you have to do this show. If you can't do this show, you're fired. So what he did was he left the hospital, flew to Los Angeles to do the show. Obviously, you see him working, taking those bumps, then flies back after it's over to get that neck surgery. So it really was insane seeing, especially around this time. I mean, when you brought with Velvet, I'm bringing up with Bobby Heenan, like how wrestlers really were kind of they weren't. I mean, they were athletes, but when it came down to it, it was clear the business side guys like Vince and managers had so much power over these wrestlers because they were simply just bodies to them, to where it's like you have to
Yeah,
work for us. Like, so there wasn't, they weren't contracted wrestlers. They were, most of the time they had contracts. Sometimes they were just handshake deals to where you're owed money, and sometimes the promoters could not give you the money. They can cheat you out of it, and so be hurt for endless amounts of time hoping to get paid. And I mean, Bobby Heenan, he's clearly a personality, but one hell of a great personality. But even then, the fact that someone as popular as him was going to be given the short end stick from Vince and still having to, tough it, suck it up, go over there, do the job, get paid, and then get the health treatment he needed. It really is like shining a spotlight of that time of wrestling, to where I'll say sadly, it's not as, I mean, there's more safeguards for wrestlers' safety nowadays. Wrestlers, anyone who's in the ring, from referees or managers, ring announcers, people around, but it's very clear like safety or health concerns wasn't a top priority when it came with wrestling during the 80s.
yeah, yeah. It's especially if now like you'll have like wrestlers like openly talk about if they're injured. Because because I think like they've just recently sort of confirmed that like at least two members of the Judgment Day are out like for injuries at the moment. Like you've got JD McDonough who was out, who got
Oh my
injured.
god, I just heard about that. And then
Yeah,
currently with
and I,
Dakota Kai, how she's gonna be out for like a week or so.
yeah, but it's one of those ones like nowadays, especially with injuries, like they will treat injuries, people with injuries better than what they used to. But that it's going to move on. Like normally, I do change. I but for interest of time, I'm going to skip that today. What would you rate this pay per view out of 5 stars?
Oh, this would be like in the low end. I mean, there's only two wrestling matches. I was entertained by the boxing matches. So those are the only three events from each location. Like, if I did rate a favorite match or so, boxing match obviously was the better part of New York. The tag team championships, the best part of Chicago, and even that tag team match, despite the fact that Hogan was the main event, that tag team match eclipses the heavyweight championship match. So it's more of like a 1 star, 1.5. I would rate this pay-per-view. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm probably a little bit nicer. I'm still in the low end. Like this is not up there in the pantheon of great WrestleManias. But I liked it a little bit more than I did the first one. And I gave the first one 2 stars. Like so, this one it was 2.5. Like well, a lot of these matches were like nothing matches. I was somewhat entertained by a good chunk of them. But I also have seen better quality pay-per-views to know that the match qualities wasn't the greatest.
Yeah.
But they're still a lot of them are still entertaining for the most part.
Yeah, I will say this WrestleMania, I can't remember much of the first one when I think. I mean, I do know WrestleMania 3 is a big contrast from WrestleMania 2.
Yeah, yeah,
And even WrestleMania 1, I think when I watched it when I first got Peacock, it really was like really highlighting wrestling. It had the celebrity appearance of Cyndi Lauper and a few others who really did shine. But yeah, here, WrestleMania 2, because of the competition with NWA, with Starcade, I think it was NWA or WCW. I just I think WCW was still part of NWA at that time before they split. So even then, with Starcade happening, it really was like competition. Vince really trying to overdo everything, and I think he was going with the style more than substance here. So this show, I would say, would be like on a scale. I would say this was more 85 over the 15% of substance that should have been some of the wrestling.
um, but that it's time to spin the wheel for the next episode. I'm skipping past some of the WCW ones for now, just because a lot of them aren't available on on Netflix for me yet.
No, yeah, it's hard to find where the library is available now that the WWE Network is gone.
Yeah. um, well, we're going from WrestleMania to WrestleMania. We're going to jump ahead to WrestleMania 28.
That's definitely a different. That's also a different WrestleMania. Which, but hey, I mean, it's still in some bits a good show.
Yeah, but yeah, this is one I vaguely I think I do I do remember watching. It was the oh yeah, that was the one I thought it was. It was the once in a lifetime match. um, oh yeah, no, I definitely remember watching this one. I should have forgot there was a.
I know WrestleMania 23. I mean, it had the main event match of Rock and Cena the once in a lifetime. It was Punk versus Jericho, Triple H and Undertaker in the forgot the gimmick, but it was their Hell in a Cell match.
I think this is the. Oh no, this is the hell. This would have been the second one then. This was the Hell in a Cell match with.
Yeah, it was
H.B.
after
Tazza.
WrestleMania 27, that first
Yeah,
one where Triple H wanted to prove that Triple H was trying to prove he could beat the Undertaker. Like him and Shawn Michaels, they both had two back-to-back fights, two back-to-back WrestleMania matches against Undertaker.
yeah, and we had the 12-man tag team match to determine the general manager of both Raw and SmackDown.
Oh God, that was so bad.
With a lot of names that were just probably so come to think, there's a few names that you've just a lot of them are somewhat. Some of them are still with the company. Some of them are still active in other places. Um, but but that does bring us to the end of Spear from the Past from this week. We'll be back next week talking about WrestleMania 28. But Ryan, where can people find you online?
Well, currently, people can just find me. I mean, look, I'm lessening my social activities, but you can still find me on Facebook, Instagram. I have a Blue Sky, so people can follow me on Blue Sky. I'm trying to. I barely use that a lot as well, but I do have those. Just find me Ryan like Mr. Paint at Blue Sky, and you'll find my logo handle. If you just want someone out there to help repost or really boost, like do a lot of reposting for someone for like anything you want to share, you can just add me. But beyond that, that's mainly where you all can find me. But currently, my podcast, Wrestling Rages and Wrestling Rambles and Rages, my co-host and I, we are working to really get to put some more episodes out. It's just more. We have a couple like already in the works. It just gets down to when we can find the time to record and edit these.
Yeah. But with that, you can find me on Take Few Productions as I host Rankin every week. Next week on Rankin, we'll be talking about the top 12 Royal Rumble pay-per-views, which should be pretty fun. And you can also find me popping up on the Movie Here and Net from time to time. I don't know when I'll be next on, but I think I think I'm on next week. But with that is the end. And until next time, have fun watching wrestling.